Hi, everyone. I'm Melvin Pels, Corporate Innovation Manager for the US branch of Choose Paris region. So I'll be hosting the event today. Thank you all for joining. I know we have people from all over the world online today, so that's exciting that the topic brought together so many people. Um, Here is our agenda for today. So after presenting some key figures about CleanTech, we'll move on to the fireside chat with industry experts, and then we'll have some startup presentations. So we'll have questions after the fireside chat and after each of the startup presentations. So feel free to use the question feature on the control panel. Actually, if you would like to say hi or tell us where you're joining us from, feel free to use the feature now to get familiar with it. Let's take a couple minutes just to tell you more about Choose Paris region. Let's move on with the slides. All right. So Choose Paris region is a catalyst for business and innovation. We partner with Fortune 500 corporations to support international companies willing to expand in the Paris region. So thanks to our presence in vibrant ecosystems such as San Francisco, but also New York, Beijing, Shanghai, and of course Paris, we are in touch with over 4,000 international companies a year. And this unique relationship with large corporations on the one hand, and with fast-growing innovative companies on the other hand, led us to launch the Global Open Innovation Network in 2017. So here are some more information. Through this global program, we organize over 30 events a year, like the one we have today, to foster business and technology partnerships between large corporations and startups. We look into an array of technologies such as artificial intelligence, robotics, or AR/VR, and also an array of sectors such as mobility, retail, fintech, or healthcare. Today, we will talk about CleanTech. So we decided to provide some key figures about CleanTech to provide some context. I'm sure that all attendees know about climate change. I'm sure that people know about CO2 emissions, but it's sometimes hard to get like a clear idea of what's going on. So I would like to share the first figure, which is 1.7 gigaton of CO2. And 1.7 gigaton of CO2 represents about 4% of global emissions annually. And that's about how much CO2 we will not emit this year as a consequence of COVID. So with a hard stop on the global economy, no planes, no cars, we only managed to reduce emissions by 4%. And 4% is the very least we have to do to align with the Paris Agreement. So that's big, and I think that shows how much work needs to be done. The second figure, it's pretty interesting. It's about plastic. You probably have heard about plastic recently. A lot of articles were being shared on social media and professional networks. So we estimate that 10% of the plastic ever produced was recycled. So to put it in another way, 90% of the plastic that was ever produced on Earth was not recycled. So it ended up burned in landfills or still out in the wild. And it's also pretty dramatic because the estimates say that production of plastic will triple over the next 20 years. So with all the plastic pollution and all the issues we know, that shows that it is crucial to first find alternatives to plastic, but also make recycling economically viable. And another interesting figure, 3%, that's how much global land surface area is covered by either concrete or asphalt. So it can be roads, it can be parking, cities. And so that's a pretty big impact on the environment through artificialization of soils, deforestation, And with a growing global population, that's something we need to think about. So these are pretty dramatic numbers, but some solutions are emerging. So we decided to tell you about 4 big trends. The first one is carbon tech, which covers carbon management, carbon upcycling, offsets. Then we have new materials with natural fibers used for materials, with compostable plastics, for example. Another trend is circularity. So that's related to managing the full life cycle of products, but also making supply chain more efficient, managing logistics in a better way. And finally, clean energy that covers renewables, energy efficiency, and electrification at large. And so in the bottom right corner, you have some figures about VC investment in CleanTech. So as you can see, after some stagnation in the beginning, around 2015 and even before that, investment started to increase and doubled between 2015 and 2019. With the other graph, we can see that investment from VCs go mostly into transportation and logistics. For other categories such as materials, energy, or infrastructure, there's also a lot of investment being made, but this investment is made by large companies such as oil and gas corporations or chemical companies. VCs invest mostly in transportation and logistics because return on investment is faster and it's also less risky. So to finish with this overview, here is a market map we designed. So this market map is based on some companies we have identified, companies we think you should know about, or companies we already work with. It is not exhaustive at all. I will share this after the event, so feel free to reach out if you want to know more about one of the segments. I think this market map gives us a better understanding of the 4 trends I was mentioning earlier. And it also gives us a better idea of how broad and rich the CleanTech sector is, with companies like Climeworks in the carbon upcycling segment. Climeworks is a Swiss company that captures CO2 from the atmosphere and makes pure raw materials out of it. So companies like that, to companies like Mycotech in the new materials segment that uses natural fibers and mycelium from mushrooms to manufacture construction materials. So I would like to be mindful of everyone's time. I would like to stop here. But yeah, again, feel free to reach out to know more about all the companies we presented here. So without further ado, I would like to invite our speakers today to join me. I thought maybe we could get an introduction from each of you to know a bit better. So would you like to go first, Alexandra, and tell us about you and your activities?
Yes, can you hear me? Yeah, perfect.
Yep.
So hi, I'm Alexandra Baracon. I'm VP US for the Solar Impulse Foundation, which I will explain a little bit more in detail what we are doing. So supporting in general clean tech entrepreneurs worldwide in their implementation broadly.
Great, thank you. Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. So I'm Matt Jones. I am the managing director for Solvay, leading up our corporate venture capital arm with a focus on North America. We're a global team. We're investing out of a $100 million fund, much like a traditional financial venture fund, but really trying to find those opportunities to accelerate business opportunities for both startups and Solvay collectively. And I've been doing kind of broad clean tech sustainability investing for the past 20 years.
Great, thank you. And Ignacio, are you still here with us?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Sorry, I can't fix my camera, so you just have to hear my voice for now. So yeah, I'm Ignacio Salsas. I'm a growth partner at LaunchPad. LaunchPad is sort of BP's scale-up factory. We have a model very different to other CVCs and VCs and private equity. We combine both the investment side of VC and private equity with the scale up factor that a huge corporate like BP can get access to.
Awesome. So I think we have a great diversity in profiles. And yeah, actually, I had an opening question, which is what does sustainability mean to you? I think that's pretty interesting because you have different backgrounds, and we have people from different areas, from France, from the US, from Spain. So yeah, I was interested in this. Matt, would you like to answer first?
Sure, absolutely, and I'll answer it because I think Solvay's a global company. We've put out really strong sustainability goals, and I think those really align well with my own personal goals as well as that of our venture opportunity. And Solvay looks at it as sustainability, but really shared value for all. So that means our employees, that means our customers, and that means the communities that we operate in. And since we're a global company, that means focused on how we can be more sustainable for the globe. And from a sustainability standpoint, Solvay looks at it from 3 pillars. 2/3 of our carbon emissions come from the energy we use in producing our own products. So we set really, really strong goals, aggressive goals around reducing our carbon and trying to get to north of 25% reductions to meet the Paris Climate Agreement. To do that, we've put a price of carbon on ourselves of €50 per ton. That's actually up from $25 just recently, really around acceleration. We see the problem and we want to accelerate some of those solutions. So really focus on our own emissions. Then we have a whole pillar that's around sustainable resources. So this goes to either the 1/3 of our footprint, which comes from the materials that we use ourselves. How can we substitute biomaterials or circular economy recycled materials to lower that 1/3? But more importantly, I think it's the high performance products we provide to our customers. Can we help our customers achieve their reduction goals by using high performance materials? Got a couple examples we can go through later around how we do that. And then finally, it's about a better life. So Solvay, safety is critical and paramount both for our employees and our communities, but also things like equality and both gender and race are things that, from a perspective, to work for a place, to have a cultural fit with a place, Solvay is really stressing that as well. So we look at sustainability kind of across the board, not just the environmental piece, but the holistic view.
Awesome. Do you agree with that, Alexandra? What was your perspective on sustainability?
Yeah, I liked when you said what you said about better quality of life. That's something that we share a lot, is a view with the foundation and our chairman, Bertrand Picard. So we always define sustainability as something that can bring a better quality of life, but also it has to be environmental protection in a profitable way. So that are the 2 main pillars that we try to push and to support in the foundation. That's the kind of solution that we are searching for, and we are supporting to have this reconciliation and merging of economy and ecology together. So for us, that's really how we see that we can be more sustainable, is to really look at climate change as a challenge and an opportunity, like a real business opportunity, and to emphasize about the profitability of the solution that can tackle it. Actually, that's how we define it with Solar Impulse.
Yeah. What about you, Ignacio?
I think I agree with both of you. I think at LaunchPad we look at sustainability from, I think, a 3-pronged view. The first one being economic on the growth aspect, right? So how can we promote the growth of our portfolio companies that is sustained till 2025, not just looking at the revenues of this year and next year, but how can we sustain that in an environmentally friendly manner and trying to double the revenues every single year, right? I think the second one being environmentally friendly, like how can our investments reduce the amount of carbon that is depleted in the environment? What solutions are we bringing to the table in terms of analytics to give more optimization of the power? How are we giving access to minerals that have been tracked for the second life of batteries? How are we giving sort of that access to data that then leads into a reduction in the CO2? And then the third one, I think, is a social aspect. I think the world has changed massively in the last 6 months, right? And how are we keeping our teams engaged from the social aspect, but as well really taking care of that burnout, right? being able to work sustainably and hold a rhythm that is hard and aggressive as a VC rhythm that exists, but also how can we promote that sustainably into the future, going at this rhythm 5 years down the line, and not just being on your screen 20 hours a day when you're home, which is very easy to do with kids.
And so actually, since all of you were talking about different business models and investments and perspectives, Alexandra, I believe that the Solar Impulse Foundation certifies projects, and profitability is a big aspect of it. So can you tell us more about this process?
Yeah, so we launched this process two years ago. The idea was to assess scientifically with experts solution, which can be process, products, technologies, and services, and to verify if that can show environmental performances and economic performance. So technically, it's we look at projects from the prototype stage. We look at solutions that are already past the proof of concept, that can have a prototype at scale with concrete results about the environmental impact and an idea of implementation with a business model that goes together. And we will verify with 3 independent experts that come sometimes from big corporations, also independent experts that work on the evaluation of the solution, if they are technically credible and scalable, if they are improving the states of the environment compared to the mainstream alternative of the market. So we'll ask innovators to provide a case study, an example of implementation in a specific context, and we will try to assess whether there is an improvement over all the life cycle of the solution compared to the status quo of the market. Is it doing better? So that's also an interesting and important point that we check in our evaluation process. And then about the profitability, we have 2 ways of assessing it, I would say. First is in the shoes of the client. So we are trying to ask the innovator to provide a case showing that the client has an incentive, economic incentive in using the solution compared to the alternative. So it's really about how is it creating savings in the long run, how is it economically performant when you look at the whole lifetime of the solution, for instance. So that's what we verify. And lastly, we also have a more specific evaluation about the business model and the company behind it to see if it can be sustainably sold and profitably in the market for the company commercializing the solution. So that's overall the 5 main elements that we'll check when we look at solutions, and that really define what we hear when we say sustainability and efficient solutions. Yeah.
And so based on like these criteria, you all invest in different companies or work with different companies. For example, Matt, from the information I gathered, I saw that Solvay Ventures focuses on sustainable resources, digital tools, well-being and health, and energy transition. Can you tell us more about these different categories you invest in?
Sure, absolutely. And I think, those categories are both to align with where we think there's good investment thesis around high growth venture opportunities, but also align with Solvay, where we bring capabilities with a focus on, hey, it's going to take a village to get some of these solutions to market. And so how can we accelerate within those major trends? And so when I think about things like the energy transition, to me, that really is renewables and shifting to electric mobility. And so Solvay, we're in batteries, we're in composite materials for lightweighting. Those are types of materials that can help with that transition and make it go faster. And so partnering with startup companies in those spaces, we think we can get to those solutions faster. And when I think about sustainable resources, again, I think about the circular economy. We're now part of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation as well, where from a venture perspective, can we use bio inputs for some of our materials that we use, or can we create new processes that can create those bio materials? And then on the back end, Solvay's been great at creating high performance materials. Can we take that knowledge and leverage it on recycling, be it batteries or carbon fiber? So, it's that melding, that overlap between where Solvay is strong and where there's great growth trends that entrepreneurs are out there trying to address.
And for you, Ignacio, like, is it only focused on energy, or do you also follow some of the like trends or categories that Matt mentioned, or are you only focused on energy? Can you tell us more about the investments of LaunchPad?
For sure. For us, we're not solely focused on energy. I would say our portfolio is mainly based on analytics company, or they all have a huge backbone on the analytics side, right? So we're looking at for here, and going into the future, we'll be looking for is, I think, two branches. First of all, the access to the data, because as I said, for us, giving access to that data really helps optimizing the processes and driving the emissions down and being more environmentally friendly, right? So first of all, the sensor fusion. How can you collect data efficiently? But it's also tapping into all the legacy devices, right? How can we tap into all the devices that are already existing out there and aggregate all that data on the edge to process it faster, to give real-time insights, right? Instead of having to deploy that into the cloud. That would be the first one. The second one would be around data analytics, right? Data analytics on industry analytics, on predictive maintenance, and on renewable sources. As we move towards more of bigger renewable portfolios with broader wind farms, broader solar farms, the amount of CO2 you can save and the throughput power you can have by having a predictive algorithm that really tests your data and analyzes the processes is huge. And the amount of costs you can save on maintenance at the end of the year is huge. So all that at the end of the day just adds into bringing a bigger return of investment into those portfolios, right? I think the third one is around the provenance of commodities. Where those commodities originated and have they been tracked properly, right? So for us, if we look at the renewable world, I think the missing key here is the amount of resources that we'll need going forward. That being, for example, coltan in Africa, or lithium for the batteries, or cobalt, right? How are those minerals extracted, being processed? Who's being employed on that circuit? So we're totally against, for example, some of the mines that use child slavery for this, right? But then how can you be able to track that, source it, and then be sure you're not using it on a second life battery, right? All of those things are things we're eagerly looking for, and where we think we can build a new value chain going forward.
Yeah, I think it's indeed really important to look at the full life cycles, from like where you get the materials from to like how you recycle, like Matt mentioned, batteries, for example, stuff like this. Do you have some examples, Ignacio, of some companies you invested in recently?
So yeah, in terms of investment we've done recently in that area, not very much. As I said, it's a very up and coming area. Most of the companies are either using one part of blockchain or moving around the blockchain area, right? Which for us, we haven't had the conviction or enough conviction power to make a first mover approach in this. But some of the companies, for example, in our portfolio that do manage the industry analytics, for example, we have three companies, sorry. I would say, first of all, Onyx. Onyx is a leading company in terms of a platform for wind, right? Their main goal is to create a platform for wind analytics going forward. Now, this offers huge saving costs. And the advantage of this is you can move from wind predictive analytics into solar predictive analytics using the same platform, right? So at the end of the day, what we want to create here is just a marketplace for renewable energy analytics. That's the first one. The second one is Light. Light is another company spun out from BP. And they offer a pattern recognition software, right? So with this, you can start to analyze the processes that go on in industry and start to map it with the knowledge-based analytics from the expertise in those industries to drive advanced algorithms or advanced solutions to really drive a throughput power that is way above any other market share right now. And then I think the last one would be Photech. Photech currently has a cutting-edge fiber optic sensing solution that they're being deployed in security, perimeter analytics, and renewable energy, right? This is huge for us. But I think the main part and the main advantage for this comes when we start deploying this into smart cities. How we monitor transport, how we map out the use of electric vehicles and the use of electric charging, how people move around the city, trying to map all that out to really drive the analytics going forward, and then devote the energy resources that are needed there.
Based on what you're saying and what you mentioned earlier, Matt, it feels like what you're invested in is aligned with what the Solar Impulse Foundation is looking at also. So, Alexandra, like, how do you work with corporations, and how, like, what kind of relationships do you have? Like, do you work together on some projects? Do you help them? Do you push some companies for venture capital funds? What's the relationship like?
Yeah, so we have Solvay are working together. So Solvay is a partner of the foundation, so it's actually funding our activities and our mission for many years, even at the stage of the solar airplane around the world mission. And so I think the first way that we worked together was sharing technology. So at that time, technology developed by Solvay for extending battery lives, for instance, were integrated into the airplane, and that same technology received the label a year ago, which is called Solef PVDF, if I'm not mistaken, Matt. And so I think the first step is that we label some solutions coming from big corporates like Solvay through our neutral process. And secondly, we engage a lot with employees from Solvay. So we create employee engagement activity with our corporate partners. First one, which is really evident, is engaging and volunteer experts from Solvay to assess the solution that we receive in our labeling process. But we also have a lot of experts from Solvay really contributing to evaluate the solutions for the Solar Impulse portfolio. And we also have a way of engaging employees from different corporations before the evaluation stage, just to support and help innovators individually to build a case and explain their impact and their profitability, to really help them at the application stage of the label, for instance. And I think lastly, what we do with corporate like Solvay is to share solutions that got the label to see if there is any interest and create matchmaking opportunities. We did that with French startups increasing fuel efficiency for aviation fleets that was linked to Air France, that became a partnership together. So that's the kind of success story, as we call it, that we try to create between our corporate and the portfolio solution.
And Matt, do you have some examples to share with us about same thing, like some companies you invested in, so we get a better idea of like what kind of project you work together on?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll quickly go through 3 examples. So I've led a deal in a battery company called Solid Power. It's a solid state technology that is safer and can allow for longer driving distance. So vehicle owners of the future will have to recharge less and be less concerned about safety with the current lithium-ion batteries. That's a unique opportunity in the sense where Solid Power works with people like Solvay on the material side, and then people like BMW on the vehicle side, and brings together that full ecosystem. Because we don't just invest in materials; you got to invest in a solution. I think CleanTech 1.0 or historical investing was more about the technology. I think investment today is more about the solution and the ecosystem and how you bring that to market. So a shift from a CTO view to more of a, chief marketing officer and chief, partnership officer. And so those are the types of opportunities around materials that I look for, is the startups who bring that full ecosystem. We're also seeing advancements in manufacturing and digital. So like what we talked about, so we've recently made an investment in a 3D printing company. Right now it's targeted at medical devices, so about better life, sustainability. But we think pushing manufacturing closer to the customer, shortening supply chains, those things will then translate into aerospace, automotive, using digital processes to invent products and make them at the time you need them, that will be a more sustainable solution. That company was called Comovis. It's based in Germany. And then finally, we don't just look at investments from a capital perspective. We do what it takes to accelerate that innovation. So we announced a partnership with a company called Ubiquity. It's based in the US. They have a way of making greenhouses more productive. Basically, you can convert wavelengths of the sun to more usable wavelengths for plants. Huge benefits of growing more food closer to where it's consumed in a more efficient way. And Solvay has expertise in the greenhouse market. We have market access, so we can also play that role, bringing it forward. So yeah, we play across the spectrum around, finding those ideas, those entrepreneurs, and trying to get them to market as quick as possible.
And so that makes me think that there's like such an array of technologies from what you mentioned to everything we presented in the map. Alexandra, since you work in the US and you also know about like what's going on in Europe, like do you see some differences in the type of technologies or the trends in clean tech in the US and in Europe?
I would say that the focus can be different. It's really, but what you see is that the challenges remain the same in every sector of industry, in different sectors of industry, but across borders. So when we for instance, when we work on challenges with corporate partners, they are looking for solutions across the globe that are solving a common problem that everyone in this operation will have independently on where they are situated. So for instance, we are working on a challenge with Air France on single-use plastic alternatives, and we are looking for innovation and solution really worldwide. So we see that sustainable buildings, clean transportation, energy efficiency, digitalization of energy system, it's the kind of trend that we see that are really across any kind of borders, to be frank.
Yeah.
And then you can also spot some specific innovation trend when we see we have 80% of the portfolio coming for Europe, so I'd be more I could speak in more detail about Europe, but you have interesting trend in data center waste management, waste heat reuse of data centers, for instance, or digitalization to match waste makers with waste users in all the sector of industries. So these are interesting trends that we see also rising for the moment in Europe, but I think most likely I'll find some in the US. So it's yeah.
Yeah. And so I think, yeah, I want to take some time to get questions from the audience. So just to give some time to people to put their question using the question feature. I had one question for the three of you, which is like from like a professional and also like personal perspective, like what kind of advice would you give people to like work towards a sustainable future, which was the title of this event? Like, what can people do to move forward and be more sustainable? Does someone want to go first?
Yeah.
Matt, yeah.
Yeah. You get the question of, hey, Matt, how do I get into venture capital? I think it's going to be the same answer though. If you want to have a more sustainable future, my recommendation is go work at a startup. They're the ones solving the hard problems that, you can be laser focused, really innovation, culture perspective. So to me, that would be the entree is go find a startup where you're passionate about the problem they're trying to solve, because they're looking for eager, motivated people. They're, inventing things from the ground up most times. So that's really where I think you can, if that's a question for a start of a career or even a transition in a career, I think those are good places to start.
Yeah, that's something that we see with all the startups we work with. Indeed, like sometimes startups have very innovative solutions. They have more flexibility because it's a smaller structure. So they have some pretty interesting solutions that large corporations, even with all the people, the means, and the experience, are not able to develop that fast. So what about you, Alexandra?
Yeah, I agree with what you said, Matt, completely. And we work and we see a lot of innovative startups, and we try to also support them. And I would maybe add, in terms of mindset, to really change the mindset on how we speak about sustainability, to speak more about efficiency and the saving that it creates, to speak the language of the business to improve their market penetration. I think that's something that is really important to change the way we speak about sustainability.
Thanks. And what about you, Ignacio? One advice to bring more sustainability?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Matt. I think for me, we're at a point right now where it's innovation is key here. I think everyone should be trying to innovate every single day, right? It doesn't mean, well, of course, if you join a startup, that's great. If you create your own idea, that's great. But innovate on your day-to-day. Think every single day, how can I be more sustainable? How can I improve the living of not just ourselves, but the ones surrounding us, right? What can I do today to improve the world? I think if we all thought that way, we will be out of this mess in no time.
And so, yeah, I started to receive some questions, and there's like a pretty interesting one from Andres. I think it's kind of for you, Matt, since you talked about batteries, but maybe all of you can answer. It's saying that the world is trying to move away from fossil fuels, and there's more and more like electrification and more use of batteries. But there's also like some impact on the environment. So to prevent kind of what happened with fossil fuels, you know, with all the externalities, the particles, the CO2, the pollution, like what can we do to have like performing batteries, but also avoid all the negative externalities we had in the past? Like, are we falling the same, doing the same mistakes, or what's being done to avoid doing the same thing with batteries? Thinking about the full life cycle, for example, like how do you look at this?
Yeah, well, I think we're hopefully not letting history repeat itself. So, you know, more and more I see entrepreneurs and Solvay itself looking at how do we improve the extractive technology. So we're in the mining space as well. How do we do that more efficiently with less impact to those communities? But equally, what I think is going to be different than the fossil fuel industry is, you know, there's a big push for recycling of those materials in the vehicle space. So either second life of the batteries right now or recycling. And when you think about it, lead acid batteries are one of the most recycled products that are out there. It's cheaper to get the lead from current batteries. And so we've reached a steady state. And I think the same thing will happen with batteries for the move to electrification. The point is still valid though. Hey, as we are extracting those minerals today before we get to steady state, we need to do a better job. And I think, you know, startups and large corporations both are heavily involved in that. I mean, look at what's going on in Europe, where they're requiring, you know, battery plants to be more efficient, use renewable energy. So I think this is a case where I think industry is maybe ahead of government regulation in certain cases, but I think government regulation is also trying to keep up.
Thank you. Another interesting question from John. So we talk about electrification. We know batteries can be an issue. There's like some controversy, and a lot of people say that hydrogen doesn't have the same externalities, and that hydrogen could be a solution. Like, how could we, like, what are the obstacles between us and hydrogen? I don't know if any of you has worked with projects on hydrogen, but that's indeed something that's very trendy right now. Have you seen companies like that, for example, Alexandra, in working in hydrogen?
Yeah, we have labeled a bunch of solutions in this area, and also we have seen some of the barriers of hydrogen, like the transportation or the clean energy production to produce it. We have seen a lot of solutions that try to tackle exactly those areas, like IC Lab, or a French solution received the label for a really an interesting container to enable the transport of hydrogen. So I think there are a lot of innovation really tackling this kind of elements that are preventing us from the right deployment of hydrogen. And we're also working to prove that it's already working and it can be pushed to the limits. Our chairman made a ride in hydrogen car to show how long it could last and how long we could rely on hydrogen batteries. So it's yeah, we already see a lot of trends trying to tackle this limitation of hydrogen at the moment.
And then I think we can take one last question before moving on to the startup presentations. And I think I want to ask you, Ignacio, about this. Let me get the question again. Yeah, so since you were talking about analytics, Destiny was asking, what are you doing to effectively analyze and measure your impact in terms of CO2 emissions and your impact in general? You mentioned, yeah, IoT analytics, like how do you concretely measure all of these aspects of sustainability?
That's a great question. So I think it's a case by case scenario. So for example, one of our companies, portfolio companies, Light, the way we measure the CO2 footprint we're saving here is around one, the maintenance that oil and gas offshore pipes need to take. Second one, the loss of oil into the sea from cracks in pipes, but especially how much we can save in terms of the efficiency of the process, right? How can we analyze when things are failing or before they fail? How can we make sure the throughput rate of the oil we're extracting is the most efficient one, right? So we're not either flaring too much or just absorbing too much sand, right? I know oil and gas is probably not the best case to talk about when speaking about sustainability. So, for example, another one is Onyx. Onyx, with their platform for wind analytics, that's very clear how you can measure the CO2 footprint. It's just by equating the energy you're saving through reducing the downtime of those turbines through predictive analytics and improved maintenance just before things start breaking to reduce the downtime, how much energy we're releasing from that turbine compared to how much we would be burning from gas or from petrol or from coal, although coal we don't like to compare because it's too high if not. But I think it's easy to get those sort of metrics when you start comparing how much energy am I extracting from the same time I would have a downtime turbine or a downtime solar panel, right? That's the way we compare it.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I just want to take one more minute to ask you the same thing, Matt, because Solvay is such a big company. Like, do you know how the group measures and analyzes its impact in terms of emissions, etc.? Do you use a software you developed? I'm asking because we have a startup working specifically on analyzing, measuring, and helping companies understand their impact. So I'm curious to know how the group deals with that.
Yeah, well, happy to make an introduction between the group and that startup, so feel free to reach out to me. Yeah, that's a question that I don't have a specific answer to. I don't know the exact thing, but I know just based on the organizations we're involved in, it is a high priority in making sure it's done correctly. So yeah, you can check our website, but yeah, I don't have the exact answer to that one.
Yeah, so I'll be happy to make an introduction. So we'll get a presentation from this company called Sinai. So I'm excited to that you guys can learn about this company today. So thank you to the three of you. That was great to have you. And some people were interested in reaching out. So I'll make sure to make all introductions and help you guys support CleanTech. That's really great. So yeah, we'll move on to the startup presentation. Each company is going to present for 5 minutes. We're going to take questions after each of the presentations. So feel free to ask the questions during the presentation, so we already have them when we move on to the questions. So first, the first person presenting is John from Cruise Foam. I don't know, John, if you managed to get the link to.
I did. I got it. Thanks, Melvin.
Perfect. Awesome. Good to see you. Yeah, so I'll let you share your screen, share your slides, and we can start.
Cool.
I'll just have to
Yeah, do I need the
If you're a presenter, you should get a request now. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. All right, hopefully you guys can see that.
Yep.
Awesome. No, thanks for having me part of the event. I'm John Feltz. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Cruise Foam, where we are making compostable packaging from the ocean for the ocean. And it's definitely a really exciting time as we see a pretty strong shift in the industry from consumers, brands, and manufacturers really looking towards working and then implementing a circular economy to really solve the huge issue that we see around single-use plastic packaging. And there's definitely been some really innovative solutions emerging on the market that we've seen recently. But for us at Cruise Foam, we didn't see a really strong solution for protective foam packaging, and specifically alternatives to expanded polystyrene that could really match its high performance, its scalability, and ultimately its cost. And so me and my co-founders, we got together and created this company called Cruise Foam, and our focus is really around producing a biobenign, all-natural packaging solutions that can really help power industry leaders and these brands to be the catalyst for a cleaner environment, because we definitely feel that there's a need and a desire, but there's been a holdup for really strong solutions that can meet the requirements to make a strong impact into this problem around plastic pollution. And so at Cruise Foam, what we've done is we've taken the second most abundant biopolymer on the planet called chitin, and it comes from multiple different waste sources. One of the most abundant is shrimp shell crustacean waste, which is about 10 million tons that go to landfill every year. And we've developed a water-based, eco-friendly process that can take this industrial waste and, using existing manufacturing techniques in industry, specifically extrusion, we can produce foam that has tunable properties that match the high compressive strength, the flexibility, the insulation properties, mainly focused on EPS, but definitely on a wide range of foams. And ultimately, on top of that, what we've really seen is the ability to introduce multiple waste streams into our process to pair with chitin. Specifically, chitin has really fantastic mechanical properties, high strength to weight ratio, but by combining other waste streams, specifically post-consumer recycled paper, we've seen the ability to really tune the properties, control cost at low economies of scale, and ultimately really match the different needs for the different customers we're trying to serve in consumer packaged goods, electronics, specifically around protective packaging. And ultimately, we really see the combination of sourcing abundant waste streams, having a really scalable technology with industry, but pairing that with clearly the need for a solution that doesn't sit around in our environment for thousands of years. Our foam, we've seen compost in regular soil between 3 to 6 months, depending on a different composition. And this is in your garden. And so right now we're going through the certification process to get at-home compostability and industrial certification. But ultimately, we'd love to also see the potential of offering a recyclable solution with high enough post-consumer recycled content. And from that viewpoint, we really see the opportunity to offer customers a real suite of packaging foam solutions to service all of their needs, from cost, performance, and end of life. And here's a little snapshot of an idea to give you, a picture of the different foams and what they kind of look like. The top one is an all-natural chitin, and the other ones you'll see, excuse me, are a combination of paper and other waste streams where we can do all the post-processing that a typical foam can do. We can thermoform, we can laminate, we can print, we can die cut to really service and address. Specifically, we're focusing on, as I said, CPG, electronics, and kind of luxury products. And so for us right now, where we're really positioning ourselves, we're scaling in-house right now. We're working with some pretty key marquee customers in those 3 market segments, looking to finalize some of the early piloting we're doing right now and enter market next year, really focusing on quick scalability with our drop-in technology, where we want to see industry able to adopt this solution quickly with low cost and low friction that we feel hasn't really been a strong position or real possibility for plastic foams in the past. And so right now, we're really excited to be engaging with the industry and really showing that there are solutions coming out there that can solve these issues. And we'd love to get in contact with any brands, manufacturers, or anybody that'd be interested to learn more and see what we can do. So thank you for your time.
Great. Thanks so much, John. Yeah, I hope we can connect you with some people interested, and we can make this solution even more common. So I have some questions here. Actually, I wanted to emphasize something, the fact that you can compost these products in a garden. That's really great, because while preparing this event, I was looking at some type of plastic, made from plants, etc. But they can only compost at high temperatures. So that's really interesting that your solution is like that performance.
Yeah. We definitely had a pretty strong focus as we developed the technology to try and create as short as end of life as possible, and ideally requiring as little infrastructure necessary to support that end of life. And so we do plan to have industrial composting as well, but we see a lot of value around the ability to crumple this up and put it in your garden. And one of the cool things about chitin is it actually fixates nitrogen in soil, so it's actually a fantastic composting material. It has lots of nutrients and a lot of value to the environment to compost into.
And so, yeah, as most manufacturers, the end product probably depends on the primary material, the raw material. So someone was asking, how do you source and qualify the providers you work with to supply, all the shells to use in your products?
Yeah, no. So right now we work with suppliers that already have a robust system around extracting chitin from shells, and this is a global supply that we've tapped into. Historically, we've worked at scale mostly with the Asia Pacific region, but we're seeing emerging technologies and marketplace for chitin supply here in the US. One of the biggest suppliers in Washington we currently work with. And the quality control is definitely around making sure there's no issues around residual proteins or minerals that could cause any harm. But what we've really seen and really differentiated ourselves from maybe other users of chitin waste or other supplies, we can really tap into the industrial grade. Our process is really robust. We can really use a wide range of quality, as long as ideally it doesn't smell like shrimp. And so the idea is we have a pretty strong ability to source a wide range of this material.
Thank you. And another question from Oliver: how do you enforce your proprietary process for making the foam when you work with manufacturers? Because they work with their own equipment in their own factories. Like how does their relationship work?
Yeah, for sure. So how we're really looking at approaching this is with some contract manufacturing OEM kind of partnerships, where they have the large capital equipment, but we have the technology around the different formulations that they can run through that current equipment. And more specifically, there's some of the additional, dye extrusion design and things like that, as far as the flow properties for these different formulations as they come through the different extrusion equipment at scale. We bring that technology suite to the OEM partners that allows them to produce cruise foam products, where we can then distribute it and sell it to our customers, in the CPG, electronics, and luxury space.
Yeah, and just to make it clear, someone was asking if you can use your product for shipping and food grade products.
Not quite yet. We are working on doing food grade and foodware contact. We're actually discussing that with some large partners here in the US and what that may look at. We saw the higher need around protective packaging as the immediate market entry, as a lot of foodware and food contact had some decent solutions out there, I would say, but we definitely see opportunity as we scale and we broaden our market segment and applications, a strong fit between us and the value we can bring to that side of the applications and protective packaging.
Awesome. And yeah, that's going to be a quick answer. So I'm taking the time to ask you, someone wanted to know how much time you need to compost your product in a garden. How long does it take?
So if it's a pure chitin foam, it'll be about 3 months. If it's, say half paper, half chitin, it'll be about 6 months. Granted, this has all been done empirically in our labs multiple times, and so we're going through the official quote unquote certification process. So I want to put a disclaimer on that, but we definitely anticipate it being between the 3 to 6 month range as far as compostability in a regular garden.
Great. Well, thanks so much, John. I know you share your contacts. If someone wants to know more or get in touch with you, feel free to reach out to me and I can make the introduction.
Awesome.
So thank you again. We'll now move on to the next company, which is Sinai Technologies. I mentioned it earlier. So we'd like to invite Maria Fujihara, who is the CEO of Sinai to join me.
Hi, good morning, Melvin. How
Hi,
are
Maria. I'm great. Thanks for joining us.
Can you see my slide?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Great. Okay, so thank you for inviting me. I'm very, very happy to be here today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Sinai and what we do. We are actually a decarbonization platform that helps companies to put a price on their carbon emissions internally. So we are really focused on corporations, not governments. And just to give a quick overview of how this happens. So there are two main ways that governments price carbon emissions. Mostly is through emissions trading systems or carbon taxes. This is just a quick overview of countries that already have some one of the two or maybe both of these types of approaches implemented. And they are a little different when you talk about governments pricing carbon and when you talk about corporations pricing carbon. But these are basically two main ways that putting a price on carbon in the world today is done. So the way that corporations do it, today there are around 1,400 companies that already have an internal price. And I'm gonna explain a little further how this is done. And there are an estimation of over $2 trillion in business opportunities for these companies that are pricing carbon internally, mostly because they are going to be investing in reducing emissions and in solutions that are going to be reducing emissions eventually. So they have common objectives. Normally, they are looking to integrate carbon strategy between operations and leadership. They are trying to optimize capital allocation and resources. They are normally looking for the fastest and the cheapest pathway to achieve their reduction targets or to establish a carbon price. And they are definitely looking to align with market demands and manage climate risks, which is basically the external look and the policy looks. So if they are going to be in a location that will have some kind of regulation around carbon price, they will definitely have to be ahead of these policies. So the reason why we built Sinai, it's because managing carbon strategy and accounting is increasingly complex inside corporations. So normally these processes are very inefficient because they have to go back and forth in the understanding, in collecting the data, transforming the data, analyzing the data, and it's many teams inside a big organization that are part of this data process. And normally these teams don't really collaborate on a single platform. And when you include the organization complexity on this, which whenever we're talking about multinational companies, it gets even harder to put everybody on the same page. So our value proposition, so we saw this in the market. I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about the team eventually, but we saw this gap in the market and the gap to actually provide a software solution that helps them to have a much more holistic solution, more interactive and collaborative across multi-departments. So this is why I started Sinai, which is the first enterprise software that collects all this information together in one single source of truth. So we are super focused on carbon emissions. And when I say carbon, I mean carbon equivalent, of course. It's all different types of gases, 70 different types of gases from Kyoto Protocol and also from Paris Agreement that these companies are managing. But we are definitely just focused on carbon. And I agree with many, I think someone earlier mentioned about that sustainability. You need to look at that as a whole. And I agree, I couldn't agree more. It's just that it's so complex. There's so many different things to look at it, water, energy, materials, locations, and so on. and we couldn't just go after everything. So we are really focused on carbon emissions, which is a big part of translating environmental impact overall into one single metric that is speakable by many people. Like many people understand the carbon emissions, and carbon emissions is actually the only metric that you can transform into a financial benchmark. So this is why we are very focused on carbon, which is GHG gases. So our system really helps companies to go through everything. We normally announce or we start off with the carbon pricing, but to get to carbon pricing, there are many steps that companies have to go over. And the first real step is actually understanding their carbon inventories, which is their carbon footprint, which is exactly translating fuel consumption, electricity consumption, or waste generation into carbon accounting. And then from there, they need to understand how this is going to behave in the future. So basically what we do is we collect this historical data. So normally a carbon footprint or carbon inventory is really looking into your past data, because whenever you are collecting something that you already consume, it's already in the past, even though you're collecting the present. And this prevents companies for forecasting and thinking about the future and thinking about the pathways that they can go, right? So this is basically what Sinai does the most. We help them to understand the future. What are all these different pathways that they have available? How, if their business is going to keep growing, what are going to be their baselines? If they have mitigation options, how much does it cost to implement those? Should they be buying carbon credits to fill it in whenever the mitigation options that are not going to help them to achieve their targets, how they're going to be aligned with external regulations and so on. So these lines, they keep going up and down. And this is basically what Sinai does. We help them to navigate across all these different pathways. So we broke it down, these pathways, into 4 main modules. So this is what we call a carbon strategy inside a corporation. The first step is definitely the inventories. Then you need to understand your baselines projections. Then you need to understand how much does it cost to reduce emissions. And finally, you implement carbon price. ICP stands for internal carbon pricing. And what would be the best approach for implementing that, and how you're going to be aligned with external climate scenarios. So ultimately, we help them to set up a price.
So you know, Maria, I just want to save some time for the question. So I don't know how many slides left you have.
That's it. That's it. This is
I'll let you finish then.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so this is the methodologies for setting up a carbon price. I'm not going to get into those. I think the main piece that I want to say here is that I see now that sustainability is leading the way inside corporations, and they are receiving data, and they are receiving vision and strategy from many different parts, and they need to have a place to collaborate together. So this is us. We have big customers already, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Maria. So if you want, you can move away from the slides so you can see the webcams again. I know it's pretty disturbing. So we have a first question from Barbara asking, how long does it take for you to build the first carbon analysis with Sinai for a large corporation?
How long does it take? So hold on, how do I stop showing? Oh, okay.
No, it's okay. We only see you. Yeah.
So how long does it take? It really depends how big is the scope of work, how big this corporation is, how many facilities or buildings or operations this company have, and how many we're going to be onboarding the system. So for right now, we are actually finishing the onboarding of 200 people from BRK, which is one of our customers, and it took us 2 months. We just kick off the onboarding with Siemens, and we are envisioning that it's going to take around 3 months because it's a bigger scope. But yeah, time-wise, it's really going to depend on the scope of work.
Mm-hmm. And then we have another question from Anne Perrine, who is asking, well, emissions from the supply chain, especially external suppliers, is becoming an important focus in terms of sustainability. And so how does Sinai addresses issues and opportunities around, like the supply chain and suppliers?
Yeah, so our system architecture allows our customers to share their data, or to invite external stakeholders to their system. And we still haven't built the dashboard where we connect everything related to double counting, or related to really how their supply chain or their value chain is connected throughout the system. But this is definitely the next step. This is where we're heading now. Right now, we just allow them to share the information, so they can share their data with their value chain, and their value chain can also share their data with our customers. And eventually, we need to build the systems to allow them to not double count, and to really account for what stands for each part of the value chain. Because when we talk about value chain, it's much more complex than just sharing data, or allowing them to collaborate.
Yeah, and since you're talking about collaboration, Max is asking, how is the data collected and reviewed? What part of the process includes human action?
So data collection is not humanized at all. Everything, it's a software, so we have many ways of collecting data. We have bulk upload, we have automated row creations that sometimes a person can input the number. That's actually the most manual way of getting data. But we also integrate with S&P and Oracle, or other existing systems that they have. But I think the most common way, because these companies, they have so many different heterogeneous systems that they currently operate with, the most common way is just uploading an Excel spreadsheet. So I think that would be the most manual way of inputting data in the system. Everything else is done by the system. All the calculations, all the connections, all the forecasting. So the person just basically needs to define the premises that they are based on. So based on location, based on their regulations, based on whatever they are thinking of, the projections, and the system does all the calculations and results automatically.
Great. Well, we have to stop here. Thank you so much, Maria.
Thank you so much.
That was very interesting, and I'll make sure to introduce you to Matt from Solvay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great.
Bye.
Thank you. So next up, I'd like to invite Michael to join me. Michael is going to tell us more about Sierra Energy. Hi, Michael.
Hi, how you doing? Hi, thank you.
How are you?
Pretty good. Let me see if I can get my screen shared here.
Yeah, perfect. We can see it.
We are Sierra Energy, based in Davis, California. We're a gasification company, so that means taking waste and turn it into renewable, energy and fuels. We'll start off with, is there a waste problem in the world? Yeah, I think everybody recognizes that. According to the World Bank, we're looking at about 2.2 billion tons of waste generated globally by 2025. And as we know, waste generates methane by sitting in a landfill, releases methane gas. That methane, if you look at it in a 20-year period, can be up to 80, 86 times more of a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. In the 100-year period, it's lower, I think, in the 25, 28 range. So putting waste into a landfill generating methane is bad. We can take that waste, run it through our gasification system, and save a lot on the GHG going to the atmosphere, and produce power like electricity or other products, which we'll talk about in a second. I did want to show, this is a slide, it's from the US, but it's landfilling and recycling through 2015. And if you look at that, while recycling had been going up, landfilling, et cetera, had been going up as well. So even doing a good job in landfilling, in recycling, we are still putting just way too much waste into the landfill. And if you followed anything going on with China that used to purchase a lot of those plastics, we're here in California, we used to talk about how great of a job we did in recycling. And a lot of that really was being shipped off to China to be put into facilities where they could incinerate it and generate power. So that's not a great solution. That's no longer available. So what we do is we have a gasification technology. It is based on the blast furnace. What happens is waste enters the top of the gasifier. We inject oxygen and steam at the base of the gasifier. That oxygen reacts with the carbon in the waste to get to a really high temperature of 2200 degrees Celsius. At that temperature, just virtually all waste breaks down at the molecular level. So that means we can handle a variety of kind of waste, just about anything. Mixed wastes are good in our system. So we take that waste, goes into the gasifier, turn it into a synthesis gas, which is mainly hydrogen, carbon monoxide, and some CO2. That gas can then be converted into power and other products. There are no emissions in our process, but if you take that gas and run a generator, you're going to have emissions at the generator. If you put it into a liquid fuel, you're going to have emissions at the car, right? But our process does not have that. Since it's based on the blast furnace, it's scalable to really large size, same as a blast furnace would do. And the cool thing about this is we're not dealing with new material science, et cetera. We inject that oxygen to react with the carbon to get to that high temperature. But we also inject steam to keep that temperature down at the blast furnace level. So we're not dealing with new refractory linings of our vessel and new material science. It's all within the realm of what is known in the blast furnace space. And we have a low parasitic load. What that means is we are run by the energy within the waste. So as long as there's carbon in the waste reacting with that oxygen, we recycle the syngas we produce around to keep the gasifier vessel hot. So as long as you're running it 24/7 and feeding it waste, it will run on its own power. I was talking earlier about, what can the end products free? So if you look on the right side, you can take syngas and separate out the hydrogen, and you could run a generator on the remaining CO and CO2 to power the oxygen. You can run a generator or a gas turbine on syngas to create electricity. You can go back into chemicals. Everything to the right of this slide, though, is not us. We are partnering with companies that understand what to do with a high quality, energy dense syngas, which is what we produce. On the left side, you'll see the materials that we have run through our gasifier. And some of the neat ones are batteries. What aren't included would be even solar panels, wind turbine blades. We're getting a lot of interest in these kinds of feedstocks that have been tested. And when you start looking at carbon footprint, naturally, if you just put in biomass, you're completely clean. As you start putting in other materials, that profile changes. Again, but we're the technology in the middle, just trying to convert the widest variety of waste into a synthesis gas. Here's a schematic of a plant, and I wanted to bring this out to show that we're kind of the key component of a facility, but we will be partnering with EPC, engineering, procurement, construction firms to build the balance of plant. So think of it a little bit like an IC chip in a computer. We're the part that's the centerpiece, taking that waste and turning it into a syngas. Whether you go into liquid fuels or hydrogen or electricity depends on the developer. So this is not in theory. We have a full facility built here. You're looking at our unit at Fort Hunter Liggett. This was funded by the California Energy Commission, which wanted us to take base waste and create liquid fuels. So if you look on the left side, there's actually more units here. That's a Fischer-Tropsch system. that takes synthesis gas and turns it into liquid fuels. The Army wanted us to generate electricity. So the syngas that's created, so this is our vessel here, waste comes in, it gets cleaned, we prevent tar buildup in a second piece. The gas gets cleaned, run around and runs a generator for, that is set up for the Army to create electricity. This facility has a gasifier that can handle about 20 metric tons per day of waste. So it is commercial scale, but we are scaling up to that 50 to 100 range. As I mentioned, we have commissioned this. This is showing wood waste going through pallets it's an Army base, so there were bullet shells and things in there. In our system, you're only going to get 3 products. You're going to get synthesis gas from the organics. The inorganics are going to melt into an inert stone. So we don't have an ash. We're too hot for that. We're actually a slagging gasifier that's going to create a stone on the inorganics that can be used for road base. We have also, it's not shown here, been running it now on municipal solid waste. And that's what we're going to be doing through the rest of the year. Almost done. This is a timeline. So we did get funding, as I mentioned, early around 2013 from the Energy Commission and the U.S. Army. We just last year closed a Series A round led by Breakthrough Energy Ventures, which is the fund run by Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson to reduce GHG. We were lucky enough to get a Solar Impulse Foundation label, so that's great. And basically, we're at the stage of running this facility, generating data, and we're signing up our next 2 projects and ready to go commercial really in 2021. And I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. So we already have questions. The first one is about how you run the facility. Can you tell us more about the operation costs and the potential revenues generated by the system?
Sure. So I think the first thing to note is we're going to be a technology provider. So we're not going to be a builder, owner, operator of facilities. We want to supply it to a developer that robust gasification technology. But the key factors are first waste processing. So while I said we can take any type of waste, you do need to have it shredded down to 2" minus. It is better to have a low moisture content, the high 20% and under. If you go to high moisture, that would make the gasifier less efficient, although we can take it. So you would have in a facility cost, waste processing, gasification, gas cleaning, and the end product. For a 50 ton per day system, that would be probably CapEx of around 13 to 14 million for the equipment. That's including the waste processing and all the way to electricity generation using a turbine a generator that can run on high hydrogen syngas. You'd have to add cost for the EPC, electrical mechanical install, connecting to the grid. But that should give you an idea of cost range.
Mm-hmm. And since you mentioned the Army as a client, Oliver was asking, do you work with municipalities also, or like some government organizations? Are there some cities you work with?
Yeah, for sure. And the good thing about where we are is because of the Army and the Energy Commission, we're able to build this facility that's, instead of being lab scale, we're able to put waste through this facility and generate all the data. So we're far along and we're talking with a lot of municipalities, a lot of companies that are interested in using the technology. I mentioned we're looking for our next 2 projects. They will likely be municipal solid waste, almost certainly to hydrogen. We're finding that just such a, whether you're in California, you got potential for low carbon fuel standard credits. Over in the EU, we have a potential client there that, there's such a need for hydrogen that works. And municipality-wise, we are permitted, it's all local enforcement agencies. So we didn't get any special Army. We're in California in a facility meeting the local enforcement agency, Monterey Bay, that area. It's a tough area to get permitted, and we're meeting those requirements. So I'm kind of giving you a long answer, but to work with municipalities, they need to see the data, the permitting, and that's all we're doing, getting to that level to be able to work with them as opposed to, showing modeling.
Great. Thank you. Well, we got very enthusiastic answers to your presentation. So thank you for presenting. And I'd like to move on to the last presentation. Thanks so much, Michael.
Thank you.
The last presentation is Pachama. So I'd like to invite Diego, CEO and founder of Pachama, to join us. Hi, Diego. How are you?
Hi, Melvin. How are you doing? Can you hear me?
Good. Yeah, I can hear you. I see your screen, so I guess you just have to put your slides. Awesome.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. My name is Diego Saez-Gil. I am the founder of Pachama. We are a company harnessing technology to restore nature as a solution to climate change. As you guys know, climate change is one of the biggest challenges of our generation, and forests can recapture about 2/3 of the extra CO2 that we put in the atmosphere since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So what we do effectively is we are building a fast, affordable, and reliable verification for the carbon storage on forest using satellite images and artificial intelligence. So we look at sources of data from forests around the world, and then we can determine how much carbon is being sequestered by that forest. And then with that, we validate and monitor the work of projects that have received carbon credits, and we help them connect to new buyers through a trustworthy and open marketplace that connects directly buyers and sellers, and that not only makes a matchmaking, but also provides monitoring and reporting tools and take care of all the back end of doing a carbon credit transaction, which historically was quite complicated to do. Why forest? Well, it turns out that forests, as I said, have enormous potential for carbon capture. But in addition to that, forests are the holders of biodiversity. They support the livelihood of indigenous communities, and they provide a lot of other ecological services like water conservation and so forth. So we are seeing all these corporations like Microsoft and Shell and Delta and BP and Amazon and Apple making pledges to achieve carbon neutrality. And that means that they're going to be looking to source high quality carbon projects. Yet when you look at how the market looks today, it's an incredibly bureaucratic and confusing world in which for a landowner to obtain those carbon credits, they have to go through a lot of different players to obtain that certification, and then to get connected to a buyer is a lot more steps. We are aiming to simplify this and make it super easy for a landowner that wants to plant trees or conserve forests to then certify carbon credits and then get connected to these corporations that want to purchase carbon credits. So we're effectively building for the verification aspect 3 models using satellite and AI: a historical model that looks at what happened in the past, a verification model that looks at how much carbon is there today, and then a monitoring model that allows us to detect in real time whether there are disturbances on the forest, including deforestation, fires, and so forth. So with that, we're already producing this type of charts in which you can see how the biomass has been kept as compared to the region in a conservation project, or how the biomass is going up versus the region in a reforestation project. All these projects are certified by the most renowned international bodies, but we provide this layer of data that gives more visibility and trust to these projects. And with this, we're already observing great results. Projects of reforestation, for example, 2 projects that I'm displaying here that have effectively increased the biomass, capturing millions of tons of carbon thanks to these efforts. And in our marketplace, we're trying to make it very user-friendly for both parties to really connect and help drive more funding to these projects. We are already working with customers such as Microsoft, Shopify, Etsy, SoftBank, and we announced last week that we partnered with Amazon to work on their climate plan. So super excited to see the demand coming for this type of projects. We are a small team of engineers, scientists, and entrepreneurs coming from great companies such as SpaceX, Google, Facebook, and Impossible Foods. And we have a great group of investors As I said, we announced last week that Breakthrough Energy, Bill Gates' firm, invested, as well as the Amazon Climate Pledge. And that's what we're trying to do, really unleash the full potential that forests have as a solution to climate change. I will stop there. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Diego. And congrats on the investment you received from the Breakthrough Fund. Yeah, I think that's very interesting, the solution you presented. This is why we wanted to invite you. Offsetting projects, I cannot emphasize enough on this, are not all equal. And I think what you do is really great and is really leading us towards actual solution. Yeah, so I have a question. Do you operate the drone and satellites, or like do you partner with some other companies to get the images you mentioned?
Yeah, no, we don't operate the satellites. We partner with companies such as Planet and Maxar, and then we pull a lot of publicly available information coming from NASA and the European Space Agency, and then we match or we combine that data with data sources coming from the ground, either field plot measurements done by forest services around the world, or LiDAR captures of the forest through airplanes. So one of the powerful things about our platform is that we can combine all these data sources and then train machine learning models with these different data sources to come up with all these predictions that are needed to verify and monitor the forest.
Mm-hmm. And so Leah is asking another question. On what criteria do you evaluate a forest project before deciding whether to list it or not on your platform?
Yeah, so one of the main criteria is this concept of additionality. Is a project effectively capturing additional carbon of what would have happened without this project? And in the case of reforestation, that means looking at what is the additional biomass of the forest. In the case of avoidance of deforestation, you have to look at what is the likelihood of deforestation given the region. And so you're looking at, is this project effectively capturing additional carbon? The second one is the concept of permanence. How long is the carbon going to stay sequestered? Because carbon in the forest have a cycle, and there are fires, and there are potential risks of reversal. So you have to look at those risks and how they are mitigated. There is a concept of leakage, which is this project not causing deforestation somewhere else? And then finally, you look at what are the co-benefits of the project. Are these projects just planting monoculture trees, or are they restoring native ecosystems and protecting wildlife? And are they generating jobs for communities? All these things are important as well. But of course, our main focus is on measuring the carbon, validating that the projects are doing what they're supposed to do, which is restoring or conserving forest.
Mm-hmm. And then another question from Bronwen, who is asking, what technologies and programming languages do you use to combine all the data sources?
Yeah, we're using the latest on deep learning, TensorFlow, and Python, and yeah, I would say that our team, we have several former Google team members on our team, so using all the latest technologies in AI.
Mm-hmm. And we can take one last question, I think, from Pierre, who's asking, how do you work with real estate land developers who want to achieve carbon neutrality?
Yeah, so when companies come to us, if they have a simple operation, we can help them with their GHG footprint calculation. Sometimes we refer them to other partners that can do, footprint calculation to them. But regardless, we try to help them understand how much should they offset to achieve carbon neutrality, and then we present them with several projects that are aligned with their strategy. So yeah, I'm more than happy to help any company that is looking into achieving carbon neutrality with forest projects.
Awesome. Well, I think time is up. So thank you very much, Diego. And again, thank you everyone for taking the time to joining us and present today. Thank you for taking some of your time. I'd just like to go back just for a few seconds to tell you about the upcoming events we have. So let me just share my screen. Okay, so yeah, that's one of our events. We have several upcoming events on different topics. We have an upcoming event in November on urban air mobility. So we will have speakers from the World Economic Forum and Group ADP, which is the group handling Paris Airport and several airports worldwide. And in December, we'll talk about the energy transition. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Here is my contact information if you would like to get an introduction or get more information about some things I shared today. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much.